Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Enterprise Dish. It is the month of October is wrapping up here, and we are hanging out with my good man, Mr. Dux. I should say Road Warrior Dux, because Dux, as usual, I think you spend more time on a plane than you do in an office.
You sound like my wife now.
I don't know if that's a compliment or not.
Both. Yes, I've been on the road since I last saw you at Ignite. I've been to Stockholm twice. In fact, last week I was at Microsoft Tech Days in Stockholm. Phenomenal event. They were showcasing the future of AI, a lot of buzz around cloud, and obviously modern workplace. So it was an awesome event. So kudos to the Microsoft Sweden team for putting that on.
Yeah, those events are always good. If anyone ever shows up in your backyard, I highly recommend trying to get to them. I've been to a couple over the years, and they've always been great.
So. Yeah, absolutely. So how have you been, man?
No complaints, really. I mean, just kind of plowing along. For those of you who are hanging out on Petri, we actually pushed out a theme, minor refresh, if you will, over the weekend in advance of some larger changes, which realistically what we did was we just kind of gutted all the legacy code. We're now faster, nimbler, stronger. But happy to get that behind us, and things are moving along. No complaints. I mean, things are just well.
So don't tell me Paul wrote the code.
Oh. Thankfully not. That would be the site wouldn't be online, let's just be honest, if Paul wrote it. So
all right. There's a lot of buzz past couple of days, huh?
Has been, I mean, we've got there's a lot of news. Sometimes there's not a lot of news, but this week is the polar opposite. Dux, curious on your take. IBM announced their intention to buy Red Hat, and now they are paying a massive premium for this. The company's market cap is roughly $20 billion. IBM is paying about a 60% premium and going to pay $34 billion for Red Hat. Now, I don't know if there was a bidding war. There were some rumors that Oracle was wanting them as well, but IBM's buying Red Hat and hope to become the hybrid cloud king. Any off-the-cuff gut reactions?
Well, first of all, I never thought this day would come. Red Hat built on an open source platform.
Yep.
And now making 34 billion. Kudos, good for them. But I think it's a good play. It's surprising, but it's a good play for IBM to be competitive in this new world of the cloud. Certainly, Amazon leading the pack, Microsoft not so far behind, and Microsoft's competitive advantage is their hybrid story, certainly. And just recently at Ignite, they doubled down on that on top of Azure Stack. They have more innovations around hybrid. And then now IBM coming in with Red Hat. Boy, there's a lot of customers that would benefit from this. I mean, think about regulated industries from government, healthcare, a lot of them that are on traditional IBM platform and also have Red Hat investments.
Yeah. One of the interesting things, and maybe this is how IBM got maybe the tip a little bit. I had somebody reader of the site contact me and said they spent the last about 5 years getting off of IBM and shifting to Red Hat, and now they're right back.
They're back.
Yeah, and I honestly wonder if IBM saw that trend. It's like, hey, where are you going? We're going to Red Hat. We're going to Red Hat. We're going to Red Hat. And then they said, okay, we're going to go to Red Hat too. So it'll be interesting.
But overall, I think it's a good thing. I think it keeps the excitement going, it keeps competition, and frankly, innovation moving along. So I'm just curious to see what comes out of that acquisition, and let's see in the next 6 months how the transition happens.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be one of the things that's going to take time to watch and see how IBM does it. There's obviously a lot of fear that they're going to turn it into Lotus Notes or maybe even Watson or something like that, but hopefully they keep Red Hat just a little bit closer to the chest. We'll see what happens here. This will be a fun one to watch. And so other things, Dux, this was just kind of a off-the-cuff blog post by Microsoft late on a Friday night. They said, hey, we've sandboxed Defender, which kind of the nerd in me like saying, hey, that's kind of cool. The reason why I get excited about this is that Defender obviously has elevated permissions. And if you're not familiar with Defender, by the way, everyone, it's basically the antivirus kind of protection platform built into Windows 10. And Microsoft made a really good point. They said, hey, because it has elevated permissions, it's a huge attack vector because if you can compromise Defender, then you can compromise the entire system. And Microsoft said, hey, we've actually sandboxed the entire thing, and that's no longer a worry.
So I would have to ask, being a longtime journalist and myself, putting my marketing hat on, there's something to say about putting a blog post on a Friday afternoon or Friday evening.
There is. This is why I was like, this is odd, because typically that's like a big should be a good moment. But if you do something late on a Friday, it's typically like you're trying to sweep it under the rug. And I don't understand why Microsoft would be doing this, because I tried to track back and see like maybe they announced this 5 years ago and now they're just getting around to doing it, but I didn't see anything like that. And so I just think this is one of those things like, it's ready, just hit go. So
do you think it's related to the recent Windows update fiasco, that just to be safe, better to be safe and not make a big deal out of it?
This is a very sensitive subject, Dux. No, not for us, but obviously for Microsoft. So to claw back for a second, Microsoft announced their next big update. They released it, and then it was deleting a bunch of stuff, and then they pulled it back and said, hey, we fixed it, but then they haven't released it really. And so the point I think here is that Microsoft announced something, said oopsies, pulled it back, and now we're still kind of waiting and kind of wondering what's going on.
But I think in fairness, though, especially in the world we live in, how technology is just moving so fast, I think that's expected with any companies.
Sure.
I think I've seen a lot of the feedback out there. It's borderline unfair to some extent. I mean, no company, no technology is perfect. But one thing I have to give it up to Microsoft is they do realize if there's blunders like that, they would move mountains just to take care of it and fix it.
Yeah. And to be completely candid, Microsoft said it was about 0.1%. I'm ballparking that figure there, which isn't a lot, but at the same time, when Windows 10 has 700 million installs, Windows itself, they said this week, was 1.5 billion installs. You don't need a very sizable percentage at all to impact millions of people. And so Windows, I think, has been argued, and probably still is the most complex code base on the planet. And it's a challenge every time they do these big updates.
Sure. And speaking of this week, talk about earnings.
Oh. So Microsoft, roughly $30 billion in revenue, about closer to $9 billion in net income. And from the non-financially savvy people, that's how much money they have in the bank after they pay all their bills. And I think the big number to take away here is 155 million commercial Office 365 customers. That number is not really showing, honestly, any sign of slowing down.
No, not at all. And I think that's one area that I think Microsoft did a phenomenal job, where they capitalized on a lot of their on-prem Office customers and really pushed them to move to the cloud. And that's something a lot of the born-into-cloud companies are not able to do, right? Because they just don't have that customer base. So I think they took advantage of that. They did a great job, and they're continuing to push the messaging around it and deployment and usage around it. In fact, we're not seeing them slow down. You were at Ignite. I mean, it's all about Microsoft Teams, right? And they're pushing it heavily, expanding Teams and also expanding the story between the entire stack. Other than Teams, SharePoint has a lot of great innovations that came out. Now, pretty much Teams and SharePoint are tied to the hip. A lot of SharePoint capabilities would show up in Teams, and then some of the Teams connectors would show up as web parts in SharePoint. So they're trying to make it as seamless as possible. It's making these technology behave seamlessly in the background. So you talk about this 155 million subscribers or users to be able to take advantage of it in their day-to-day life.
Yeah, I mean, this is really tangible. One of the things I was thinking as you were talking here, I bet you could potentially map some of this out, the migration to Office 365. I bet it's pretty closely tied to the sunsetting of older versions of Office, right? If a company has an older version and it's still supported, then they may not migrate. But as soon as that deadline comes up to where they have to migrate, I bet everybody's mostly moving to Office 365. I can't imagine why you wouldn't at this point.
Yeah, and also Microsoft realizes that they have to help customers to get to Office 365. They're continuing to update their migration tool. So Microsoft, in case you guys don't know, has a free SharePoint migration tool. And it doesn't just migrate SharePoint. You can take file share, move it to a SharePoint library or OneDrive. You can download for free. So that's one. And then for larger customers, if you have big investment in Office 365, you have Fast Track benefits. Fast Track provides you guidance, and to some extent, you can also phone a friend and ask for help. There's live human being that can help you move to Office 365 from email, your files to OneDrive, or even old SharePoint sites to SharePoint Online. So they're investing heavily on this.
Question on that Fast Track. Who is providing that? Is that somebody like yourself, or is that Microsoft? Or if you genuinely go down the Fast Track path, how does that process work?
That's a great question. So the Fast Track is essentially a full program. And the idea is to fast track customers to go to the cloud and adopt the cloud, specifically Office 365, Dynamics, and even Azure. So there's programs for the different Microsoft cloud offerings. And who does it? So Microsoft has full-time resources that provides guidance, but also they work with a network of partners to help fulfill some of the fast track needs. So for example, AppPoint is a fast track partner. So we do help customers quickly migrate to the cloud so they can take advantage of all the goodness. So it's both. It's Microsoft and certified fast track partners.
Gotcha. I've known about the program and I know what they offer, but I've always been kind of curious about what actually happens when somebody goes up and says, "I'm going to do that," clicks the button and starts it. So a little bit of insight there, a little bit of insight. Other interesting things, just from a personal perspective, Microsoft did another $1 billion in revenue on Surface, which I always think is interesting. That's 5 consecutive quarters now of $1 billion in revenue for that brand. I think it's safe to say that it is not going anywhere, despite some analysts saying that Microsoft would stop building that hardware in 2019.
I mean, look at all the reviews, right? Like Mashable named Surface 2 as the best laptop of 2018. Who thought that this day would come, right?
Yeah.
It's not Mac. It's not it's none of the Mac computers, but it's Surface laptop. It's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it's kudos to them for relentlessly not giving up, because they had a lot of opportunities where they could have just thrown in the towel and been, this is the game over, and here we are, and it's going well for them. There's no other way to describe it.
So I'm still hopeful for Windows Phone.
You might. you really caught me off guard with that one. You are holding on dear, my friend, and I wish you the best of luck. That is the. That will be an interesting.
I can't wait for our future show where we say 5 consecutive quarters Windows Phone is the best phone ever.
I will pop a bottle of champagne, the bubbly stuff, the day that happens live on the podcast. I absolutely promise.
Maybe our kids will be doing
it. There we go. Another thing, Dux, I actually wrote this up right before the show, so you probably haven't seen it. Microsoft announced at some point, they didn't formally send out a press release or anything for obvious reasons once you hear what it is, that Teams, well, Dux, you would argue that Teams is probably the hottest thing inside of Microsoft right now. Is that probably fair to say?
Absolutely. I mean, Teams is the fastest growing product Microsoft ever had. And just not only based on industry reports, analyst reports, but earlier you were saying I'm traveling the world. It's because of Teams and SharePoint. Yeah. I've been working closely with Microsoft and customers really to help them understand how to ensure operational governance around Teams, because everybody loves it. They just want to make sure they make it easy for their organization to take advantage of it. So yeah, Teams is hot.
So when you hear the headline or whatever, the statement that Microsoft is killing Teams support for Windows 10s, what does that make you think about Windows 10s? So the actual headline, or what Microsoft announced quietly in their documentation, is that they're no longer supporting Windows 10s with the native app. And so if you want to use Teams on Windows 10s, you have to use it through the web client only at this point. So
Windows Phone.
Yeah, I think the writing is on the wall that Windows 10s is not going to be a thing for much longer, considering Microsoft is not putting Teams on it. I mean, that's kind of the way it is.
Part of growth mindset, man. Fail fast, fail forward.
Yeah, and that is absolutely true, is that they didn't really screw around with this. They tried Windows 10s, they put it out there, they gave it a good solid effort, and now they're moving on. It didn't work. Yeah. It didn't work. They didn't drag it on for many iterations, so. All right, Dux. One of the things we've been doing here, and actually I talked to Dux about this right before, and he's got a better thing. Usually we do acronym soup, where we dive into an acronym, and then Dux just pulls out the cheat sheet and says there's something better than actually trying to do acronym soup. What you got for us, Dux?
So in this Microsoft world, I've been working in it, part of it, for over 15 years now. I still can't keep up with all the Microsoft acronyms, from EPG, SMSP, E1, E5, G1, GCC, Run DMC, I don't know. So there's an actual app out there put together by a partner out in UK. It's called the Microsoft Acronym Dictionary, or MAD. Go to your app stores. It's in the Windows Store as well, iOS, Android Store or Play Store, and then Windows Store. Just look for Microsoft Acronym Dictionary. You download the app, and then you can search any Microsoft-related acronym, and it'll tell you what it is and what it means.
Well, That is actually super helpful. If you're new to the industry, obviously that is going to be probably your lifeblood for at least the first couple months. That way you don't have to feel awkward when someone says something. Just write down the letters that you think it is, and then you can go look it up. And
Absolutely. I have it on my phone, on my computer. And in fact, if I have new colleagues that joins the company, that's the first thing they need.
Yeah. And I always do say too that don't be afraid to ask. I think a lot of people get stuck in that idea that, especially if they're new to a company and people are just rattling off acronyms, that just honestly just stop and say, hey, can you explain what that is? Because I have no idea what it is. I think there's no shame in doing that at all. So Dux, we got the Dux's dish. I know you're traveling again. Where are you going this time? I'm curious. What are you doing now?
So as you can see, I'm working from home today because after this call, I'm going to head to Singapore, and then I'm going to go to Manila, and then go to Hong Kong.
Oh my goodness.
Part of the Teams excitement and SharePoint excitement. So what's exciting is in Singapore, I'm going to do a Teams operational governance workshop with Microsoft and select customers. And again, just walking through how to really deploy, adopt, and ensure governance around their Teams and SharePoint deployment. Mm-hmm. And then what's exciting in Hong Kong, I get to co-present with Dan Stevenson. And Dan used to be in Redmond, part of the Teams engineering group. Now he's in Asia. He leads customer engineering for Asia. So we're co-presenting a similar session. And then in Manila, I have a couple meetings, but I don't know if you knew this. I'm originally born and bred from the Deep South, Manila, Philippines. So I get to visit friends and family as well.
And so how long are you going to be gone? How long is this going to keep you on the road?
Total, including flights, about 9-10 days.
Yeah, that's a healthy trip. That's a healthy trip.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, to be honest, it sounds exciting though. I mean, it's one of those things that it's a privilege to be able to do that for a living. And so.
Oh yeah. Look, man, I'm grateful for this opportunity. Not only do I get to meet people, I get to enjoy, great food and just really talk, right? At the end of the day, sure, geography separates all of us, but at the end of the day, it's about a great conversation, a great meal, great drinks, and that's what life's made of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Dux, before we shut it down, you got anything else for the day?
Anything else? Boy, it's the end of the year. And, as you guys know, we at AvePoint, we're committed to continue to put out there a lot of great resources and content around SharePoint and Teams. So just make sure, check out avepoint.com/resources. We have a lot of great webinar coming up. We have a Teams extensibility webinar coming up this November. We have a bunch of new ebooks and blogs coming out in not only in English, but in French, German, Japanese as well. So I invite you to check out our website, avepoint.com/resources, and you'll find tons of good content around Office 365, Teams, SharePoint, and everything else.
Yeah, it was actually one of the things I forgot to bring up is somebody asked a question about resources for Office 365 content. And I know Dux is slightly biased because he works at AvePoint, but there's a reason why Dux is in all these places speaking, because he is a significant, not only resource, but he's pretty educated on all of this stuff too. And so you can trust that the stuff that they're writing is probably right on par, possibly even better than what Microsoft has given you. So there you go.
That I did not say. You said it.
Well, I say it because it's true, Dux. I know you well enough, and I know the people that go to your sessions always rate them highly. And your work speaks for itself. So there you go.
Thanks, buddy. I'll make sure I'll send over some goodness after my APAC trip.
Not required. Obviously not required. But Dux, obviously, very safe travels. We will catch you when you come back, and we'll be very curious to see how your travels treated you, if you learned anything new along the way. And to everybody else, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time here on the Enterprise Dish.
All right. Bye.